our guys coming out to do this. My name is Bandele. I'm from the Black Student Congress here at Community College, and I would like to first thank everybody for coming out to enjoy themselves this evening. As you know, our speaker this evening is Kwame Ture, also known as Stokely Carmichael. Kwame entered Harvard University in 1960, graduating in 1964 with a BA in philosophy. He was a leading organizer in the civil rights and black power movements of the 60s. He participated in the Freedom Riders and co-founded SNCC, which was the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, which also was the vanguard of the civil rights movement during that period. Kwame, through SNCC, helped to organize the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, which challenged the legitimacy of the regular Democratic Party of Mississippi at the 1964 Atlantic City Democratic National Convention. Kwame was also key in organizing the Memphis to Jackson March, from which came the rallying cry of Black Power. Kwame later became instrumental in organizing many chapters of the Black Panther Party for self-defense. After realizing the importance of consolidating the struggle of all African peoples, Kwame moved to Guinea, West Africa, working and studying under Sekou Touré, and later the late first Prime Minister of Ghana, Osejifo Kwame Nkrumah. Kwame has lectured at numerous universities throughout this country and the world. He is now currently one of the national representatives of the All African People's Revolutionary Party. And without further delay, the Black Student Congress here at Community College of Philadelphia is very pleased to present to you Kwame Ture, also known as Stokely Carmichael. Let's give him a warm welcome. Thank you. Good evening. The Congress has asked that we direct some of our remarks to, number one, explain the development of black revolutionary thought in the 60s and 70s and why it has failed in the following years and how it can be revived and used as an effective weapon for the 1980s. The second question is, what is scientific socialism? During our remarks, we will address these two questions. Of course, for the first question, we explain the development of black revolutionary thought in the 60s and 70s, why it has failed in the following years, and how it can be resolved and used as an effective weapon for the 80s. We want to say that we see no failure in the revolutionary thought of the 60s or the 70s, just a change of form in the constant struggle. Constant struggle against oppression. Life is made up of both material and immaterial aspects. Human beings are made up of both material and immaterial aspects. When we say the material aspect, we mean matter, the body, that which we can see, that which we cannot, that which we can touch. When we say the immaterial aspect, we mean that which we cannot see, that which we cannot touch. It is referred to generally as spirit, mind, soul. In our discussion here this evening, we will not refer to it as spirit simply because here it has a theological connotation. We come to have a revolutionary discussion. Consequently, we will speak of it in scientific terms. We will call it mind. We say human beings are made up of two aspects, the material and immaterial aspect. Body and mind. In order for a man to be free, he must be in control both of the material and immaterial aspects of his life. In order for a people to be free, they must be in control of both the material and immaterial aspects of their life, and of course their geographical entity which belongs to them, their nation. Of course, if we're not careful, we will think that perhaps material, that is to say, freedom from material enslavement is the most important, but not so. Actually, the most important is the immaterial aspect of life. For example, a man may have enough power to make us a slave, that is to say, a man may have enough power to make us pick cotton,
but he can never have enough power to make us accept that we are born to be slaves or accept that we're born to be cotton pickers. Of course, we want to make it clear here, the job of the oppressor is to enslave us immaterially. Once enslaved immaterially, our material enslavement is totally insured. We say a man can make us a slave, make us be a cotton picker, but if we accept that we are slaves, this man will never have to worry about our revolt. The man can never force us to accept slavery, and once he can no longer force us to accept slavery, we will always be a threat to him, because while being oppressed materially, understanding immaterially that we must be free, the struggle will be constant. We say in order for a people to be free, they must be in control both of the material and the immaterial aspect of their lives. We are revolutionaries here in this corner, consequently we say that matter is primary. But we say this ability to be able in control of matter and mind, to be in control of the material and immaterial aspect, is the only way that a people can ensure their... Of course, in order for a people to be free, they must be conscious. This question of consciousness and unconsciousness runs across every sector and aspect of life. Even Christians can be divided into conscious Christians and unconscious Christians. And here we say the difference is only the comprehension. Even in the ritual, one can become confused. An unconscious Christian goes to church every Sunday because they feel they're forced to go to church either by peer pressure or by the curses that their parents will heap upon them. Thus they go to church every Sunday, unconscious, making no contribution to Christianity. But they go every Sunday, even carry their Bibles with them. A conscious Christian not only goes to church every Sunday, but looks forward to going to church every Sunday. We say this question of consciousness and unconsciousness must be seen as crucial. People cannot be free unless they decide to become conscious, and they cannot decide to become conscious unless they decide to control both the material and the immaterial aspects of their lives. Of course, we say now the matter is primary, but the immaterial aspect is crucial. If I'm a smoker and you see me put my hands in here looking for cigarettes and there are no cigarettes here, and you see me go here and look for cigarettes and there are none here, and you see me go here, while my hand is moving, do not be confused. It is my mind that is telling my hand where to go to find the cigarettes. It is the immaterial aspect of life that will guide us properly to our liberation. Of course, here we must come to understand. Human beings, we say, are made up both of the material and the immaterial aspect of life, matter and mind, body and mind. And we say that they cannot be free until they're in control of both of them. But we say the most important is the immaterial. That is to say, once the people are in control of their thinking, we have nothing to worry about, they will be free. Once the people are not in control of their thinking, once the enemy is in control of their thinking, obviously the people will not be free. Consequently, the struggle which we come to wage is a struggle which takes place on both levels, the material and the immaterial level. We wish to direct our remarks this evening clearly to the immaterial level. Of course, we want to say the material level, it is primary. It is here that consciousness is gained from understanding the material reality which we perceive. But it is the immaterial which directs the material. It is the mind which directs the body. Our people must be free. This is clear. Human beings, being made up of material and immaterial reality, have a sense of responsibility and a sense of conscience which is not found in animals of the lower form. A dog is just made up of material reality. End of discussion. He cannot think. Neither can a monkey, neither can a fish, neither can a fowl, but human beings can. Consequently, human beings have an added responsibility placed upon them than the dog or the cat or the fish. Of course, some of us, just looking to the material aspect of life, make all equations with it. The enemy itself, in trying to control our thinking, seeks here in every way to not only control our thinking, but to stifle our thinking. We're speaking about consciousness and the need for the people to think. We said we're revolutionary. Consequently, we're opposed to all bourgeois philosophers and all bourgeois thinkers. In order for someone to think, they cannot think, they must act. Clearly then, we say number one, a people seeking their liberation, a people seeking to control the immaterial aspect of their life, a people seeking to control their thoughts must act. We say clearly, the capitalist system will come to confuse the people and let them think that a thinker is a thinker is a thinker. We come to say the only thinker is the actor. It is only he who is doing or he who is acting that can really think. For example, you may think nicely about your people. We suffer all the time. You may think how good it is for our people to come together. You may even have nice dreams about the people being united in struggle, fighting the enemy. But if you just think about the people and you do nothing about these thoughts, trying to bring the people together, then absolutely you do nothing but think about the people. It's better that you think about fairy godmothers. It is only through acting that we can come to think properly. It is only those of us who are fighting for the people, it is only those of us who are organizing the people that can come to think about the people. We said that in the first instance, if one wants to be free and one wants to control the immaterial aspect, one must be dealing constantly with the material aspect. A slave who is a slave on a plantation may think he's as free as a bird, but if he's not free and if slavery is still a system and he's not up north, he's not free. He will pick cotton every day of his life until the master says stop. Consequently, one cannot be free immaterially and not free materially. On the contrary, if one is truly free immaterially, one will struggle to make sure that one is free materially. We say a person cannot be free materially, free immaterially. If we are picking cotton and the sweat, the labor, our labor is used not for the benefit of us, but for the benefit of others, here we're certainly not free. Consequently, under a system of chattel slavery, it is clear to see that the people are materially enslaved. Of course, the job of the master is to confuse us. Let us think that we are made to be slaves, that this is the best we can be, our children must be slaves. If the master convinces us of thinking like this, we're finished. We will be slaves forever, blessing slavery and praising the master, even looking for his good points. But if we know and understand that we are born free and the master is exploiting us and it is our responsibility to fight for our freedom, we will always be fighting. Even while picking cotton, we'll be looking for means to escape. We repeat again because we want to underline. In order to control the immaterial aspect of life, one must be dealing with the material aspect of life. One cannot think one is free if one is not actively engaged in struggle for freedom. One cannot think that one is free if one is not actively engaged in struggle for freedom. And the more actively engaged one is in struggle for freedom, the more clearly and precisely one will think. It is important for us to hook these two together. Capitalism, we say, comes to confuse the people. It comes to confuse their very thinking. Some think they can think and do nothing, and therefore they're thoughts. I heard a man the other day. He told me, I can swim. I think I can swim, and so I can swim. I said, have you ever swum? He said, no, but if I think I can swim, I can swim. I said, my brother, I take you to all the water in the world. Put you before it. You can think upon think upon think upon think, but until you get in the water, you will never be a swimmer. We underline here, it is only through acting that we can think. If someone really thinks about their people, the only way they can be thinking about their people is working for the people. It is only through working in the material reality that we will come to control the immaterial reality which we must struggle for. It is only when we come to struggle for our freedom that we will come to see precisely how to struggle for our freedom. But the only way we will come to know how to struggle for freedom is in the struggle for freedom. Our people will be free. Human beings have an instinct which animals of the lower form do not have. They have an instinctive love of justice. Human beings have an instinct which animals of the lower form do not have. They have that instinctive love of justice. It is this instinctive love of justice which assures us the defeat of the enemy and the triumph of the people. Of course, even if one were speaking in scientific terms, if one never read Karl Marx, if one never read V.I. Lenin, if one never read Frederick Engels, if one never read Mao Zedong, if one never read Ho Chi Minh, if one never read Kim Il-sung, if one never read Che Guevara, if one never read Fidel Castro, if one never read Kwame Nkrumah, if one never read Kwame Ture, if one never read the Honorable Marcus Garvey, if one never read Malcolm X, if one never read Patrice Lumumba, one would know just by looking at the people that capitalism is doomed because of the instinctive love of justice which the people have. This instinctive love of justice is demonstrated on several levels. We can look at it on the creative level. In every society that we know, independent of every other society, there is no society which we've discovered that has no religions. Every society has religions. Every society. Of course, these religions may vary widely as they do. Some have one God, some have many gods. Some, like the American Indian, understand that the earth is their God. Consequently, we say that one will look at every society and one will see that there is no society that has not, independent of every other society, produced religions. This production of religions is nothing but the manifestation of the instinctive love of justice which the people have. This religion here manifested in so many different forms has one universal and essential thread running through it. Though the religions may vary in form, all of them come to preach that man should live a better life, that man should live on a higher moral life, that man should follow and obey just God. We say all religions come to push people to a higher level of life. Consequently here, we can see this instinctive love of justice representing and manifesting itself in religions. Of course, it's not only here. The longevity of this instinct is clear. The struggles of the Irish is instructive. 800 years ago, British imperialism marched into Ireland with the hopes of dominating the Irish people. 800 years later, the Irish people are still struggling against British imperialism. Not only are they still struggling against British imperialism, but their struggle against British imperialism is intensifying. It's only a fool like Margaret Thatcher who doesn't understand the Irish are indeed going to be united and free. We say the people have an instinctive love of justice. It's demonstrated everywhere. Of course, a man or a woman who is not free can only make history by struggling to be free. Of course, we're talking here about the conscious man, about the conscious woman. Of course, to make a thin and broad general description or division between the conscious man and the unconscious man, we will say that the unconscious man is one who acts without understanding the reason for his actions or even seeking to understand the reasons for his actions. The conscious man, the conscious woman, is one who recognizes all the reasons for their actions. Not only recognizes, but tries properly to understand them. Of course, the revolutionary, being higher than conscious, not only recognizes the reasons for their acts, but come to affect the reasons for their acts, taking self-determination into their own hands. We're talking, however, on the lower level of consciousness. We say the conscious man, the conscious woman, is one who seeks to understand the reasons for their acts. The unconscious man, the unconscious woman, is one who doesn't understand the reasons of their acts and seeks not to understand the reasons for their acts. Capitalism, this vicious system, seeks not only to exploit us materially, but seeks also to exploit us immaterially, not temporarily, but forever. The struggle, consequently, which we come to wage against it, must be a struggle forever. Have you heard the pigs speak? Listen to Bacon. He says, Israel forever. When they come to plan injustice, they don't plan injustice temporarily. They don't plan it for truth. They plan it forever. Consequently, the enemy doesn't oppress us spontaneously. The enemy doesn't oppress us based on instinct. The enemy oppresses us based on clear scientific reason. The people have an instinctive love of justice. But human beings are not like animals of the lower form. Consequently, all our instincts must at all times be guided and directed by reason. A man who has lust and doesn't have this instinct of lust checked and directed by reason will act like an animal. He will rape a woman. A man who doesn't check his greed by reason will act like an animal. He will come to exploit others. He will want to be a capitalist. Not only if bad instincts should be checked by reason, all instincts must be checked by reason. Consequently, even the instinctive love of justice which the people have must be checked and directed by reason. If we wanted the history of Africans in America, all we would have to do is to say that Africans in America have gone from slave revolts to urban rebellions. End of discussion. This is their history. This is their proper history. We say the only way a man or a woman can be free is when they're engaged in struggle against the enemy. If they're not fighting against the enemy, they're making the enemy's history. A brother who goes to fight in Vietnam is helping American imperialism, whether he knows it or not. We say here the issue is not being aware of it. We do not want to make you think that only people who are conscious act. No. Unfortunately, many people act unconsciously. As a matter of fact, become arrogant in their unconsciousness. It will demonstrate it as we go along. We come to show the struggle that we have. We say here it's a question of being conscious. The man even going to Vietnam may think he's fighting for democracy, may think he's fighting for freedom, may die believing this is what he's fighting for. But the fact isn't what we think, the fact is what is. That is why the only way we can understand the immaterial reality is by being in constant struggle with the material reality. As a matter of fact, it is in constant struggle with the material reality that we will come to see properly the immaterial reality. This man taken from Philadelphia ghetto, this man taken from Harlem, this man taken from Mississippi, confused with words of democracy, sent to fight in Vietnam for democracy, so confused, put into battle, will come to see who really is democratic, will put down his guns against the Vietnamese and turn them against American imperialism. Consciousness then is a result of constant struggle against the material reality to transform it and change it. We say it is only through this struggle that we will come to properly understand it. Of course, words can never criticize actions. I'm an organizer. I've been organizing my people consciously since I'm 17 years old. I'm 40. Certainly a man or woman who's never organized the people cannot criticize my action with words. I would be stupid were I to pay attention to them. Only an organizer can criticize my action. Only one who's organizing can come to criticize my action, be it 6 days, 6 weeks, or 60 years. But one who's never organized can never criticize my actions. We say here that we're against all forms of bourgeois thoughts. Only those who are fighting for the people can come to criticize those who are fighting for the people. Those who are not fighting for the people, the best they can do is learn from those who are fighting for the people. We said the instinctive love of justice must be dominated by reason. When our people jump up in Miami and burn the city down, when we applaud, we're not applauding for anything special. After all, even a rabbit pushed in a corner would jump up and fight. This here is mere instincts. We will applaud ourselves when we come to organize, coordinate, and plan the activity of Miami so we get better results from the blood that is shed. We are calling for revolution. And we say it is only revolution that leads one to control the material and the immaterial aspects of life. And we say the only one makes revolution is by changing and transforming the material aspect of life from taking a society where there's exploitation to make a society of exploitation. We say it is only by revolution, but revolution is not made in the mind. Revolution is made by the overthrow of unjust systems and the implanting of just systems, allowing for a just mind to properly flourish. We call for revolution, and we say this revolution is a clear revolution. It's an inevitable revolution. Matter itself functions and goes on. Even if you would like to think and arrange it differently, it continues that way. If you were born in the 1960s, you may have nothing to do with the struggles of the 1960s, but the struggles of the 1960s have everything to do with you. Let it be properly understood. That is the material reality that shapes us and not us shaping it in isolation from everything else. Our people must be freed, but they can only be freed when they are organized. We say it is only through work with the material reality that we will come to understand the immaterial reality. Any African who's not in an organization is an African who's never tried to do anything for the people. Any African who seriously tries to do something for the people knows that the only way to do it is in an organized manner. Even instinctively, we know it. Ask anybody, even non-Africans, can any group of people be free if they're unorganized? No. Ask them, can an unorganized mass go up against an organized mass and win? No. Ask them, are you doing something to help organize your people? No. And they have no contradiction at all. Matter of fact, when you push them out, well, I don't like organizations. The leader's always ripping everybody off. And you know how that. But must we be organized to be free? Yes. We come to put the material reality in harmony with the immaterial reality. And the only way we can do that is through struggle. Of course, when we cannot control the material reality, we must at least control the immaterial reality. For example, when we come to struggle against capitalism, capitalism will seek to give us our history. Here we must struggle at least to take our history and use our history for ourselves. It's crucial. We said if we wanted to give the history of Africans in this country alone, we would say that we've gone from slave revolts to early rebellions. Of course, in capitalism, when bourgeois philosophers give us our history, they write that the first ambassador to the UN was a victory. The first mayor in Atlanta was a victory. The first African mayor in Washington, D.C. It makes it appear as if victories are achieved for us once we integrate ourselves into the capitalist system. This is not victory. This is not victory. Here, of course, the relationship can be seen again in relationship to material and immaterial reality. Of course, there are two types of changes which can occur: quantitative changes and qualitative changes. But only qualitative changes allow for progress by human beings. Quantitative changes do not. Qualitative changes, in order to have quality, you must have quantity. But by merely having quantity doesn't mean you have quality. In order to have quality, you must critically organize the quantity which you have. Consequently, even for our people to go forward, every time we make a leap, we must come to critically organize that which we've gained and use it to push us forward. If we don't do this, the enemy organizes it against us. Here, we're coming to show a clear process for going forward. But underlying the process, we say, in order for us to achieve our liberation, underlying is we must be organized. This matter, of course, we cannot even to study our history, we must be organized. We say if we don't have a way to properly interpret our history is interpreted to us by the enemy and given to us in a form that is totally deformed. I think the miseducated is really the best term for it. Look, when one takes the facts and lines up the facts, it is only when one comes to understand the struggle that capitalism waged to control our mind that one can see the backward analyses. Let me take some facts. Take an Irish girl in this country, 19 years old. She's never been to Ireland. She's 3 generations removed from Ireland. She doesn't speak one word of Gaelic. Call her in the streets anytime and call her a little Irish girl. She's proud. She's even happy that you happen to recognize that she's Irish. She will ask you, how did you know I'm Irish? Did you see me in the St. Patrick's Day parade? Yes. See a little African girl about 19 years old in the streets here. Call her African. You know what she tell you? I ain't no African. Look at the facts. We say the Irish girl has been 3 generations removed from Ireland. So is the African girl. We say the Irish girl may not speak one word of Gaelic. So the African girl may not speak one word of any African language. But the fact is that this Irish girl, her parents left Ireland voluntarily, even though forced by religious persecution and British imperialism. All of them walked on the boats. Not one African, even those who were sold, walk on the boat. Every African had to be chained to be put on the boat to be brought to America. We say just look at the facts. Just looking at the facts, it would be clear to us, with just instinctive analysis, that the African would have more love for Africa than the Irish has for Ireland. It is clear. But yet, not only is the case reversed, but the African is even ashamed of Africa and becomes arrogant in their... Of course, we know, anytime you find an African who's ashamed of Africa, you find an African who's totally ignorant about Africa. That's clear, because any man, any woman who knows anything about Africa, even if they're not African, are proud of the contributions that Africa made to world civilization. It is only an ignorant African who doesn't know about Africa. This is a constant struggle to control the immaterial aspect of our lives. We say it is clear. Let us just give some examples of Africa's contributions we want to show you. This question of struggle to control the material and immaterial is just that, a question of constant struggle. The enemy will let you perceive material reality and analyze the material reality in such a way that you're helping. The only way that you can properly be understanding the material reality and helping yourself is when you're constantly engaged in a struggle against the enemy. Let it be clear. When we say we're revolutionary here, we are 100% against American capitalism and all of its manifestations. We are totally against it. We're not trying to reform it. We don't want to build up one aspect of it. We want to overthrow it, and are going to overthrow it because it's the only way our people are going to be free, and they will be free. If one would look at the contributions which Africa made to world civilization, they are overwhelming. Were we just to come and talk about them now, it would take us forever. But we come just to highlight one aspect of it, only one aspect of it. This aspect in relationship to religions, Africa's contributions to world religions. We want to take the 3 monotheistic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And we want to show Africa's contribution to these 3 great religions. And we want to show them what we want to show every African knows, but it's only depending upon how you're struggling with the material reality that will let you know what to do with that quantity which you learn. If you know numbers 1 up to 1,000, but you do not know how to add, how to subtract, how to divide, or how to multiply, that quantitative knowledge is totally useless. It's only when you know these numbers 1 to 10, you come 1 to 1,000, you come to critically organize them, allowing you to multiply, divide, etc., that we can make qualified leaps and make progress in history. We keep hammering out our point In order for human beings to make progress, the progress must be of a qualified nature, not quantity. It must be quality. Of course, animals of the lower form can live a life and by quantitative changes come to have a better life. If you take a cow and put him in a bigger pasture, he'll eat more grass and give you better milk. But just because you take a man and put him in a bigger house or a bigger car or give him more money, you'd be stupid to think that he has a better quality of life than another man who doesn't have the same quantity. Let's be careful. Sometimes people think that by getting bigger houses, they get a bigger quality of life. The pimps in my community drive the biggest cars. I will never have that quality of life. Of course, we must arrange the quantity properly to have the quality. The Torah tells us, the Bible tells us, that Judaism was born in Africa. Africa's contribution, consequently, to the monotheistic religion, Judaism, is that it gave birth to it in Egypt. Of course, Judaism's great contribution is that it presented the concept of one God, the unified God. If one would just take a cursory look at African history, one would know the concept of one God had long been worked out in Egypt before Jacob was sold into slavery by his brothers. Consequently, this concept of one God is clear where it came from. We say anyone who knows anything about the Torah, about the Bible, knows that Judaism began in Egypt. Consequently, all conscious Africans, understanding that Judaism began in Africa, have a responsibility to fight to maintain the integrity of Judaism. Consequently, they must be against Zionism without pity. The confusion here will not arise for any conscious African, because a conscious African is an African who knows his history, because it's history that guides us whether we know it or not. Consequently, any African who doesn't know their history is an unconscious African. And any African not seeking to know their history is truly an unconscious African. But capitalism will make us come if we're not careful. We say Africa. Africans who are conscious could never be confused. The first Jews in the world were fallacious Jews. Fallacious Jews come from Ethiopia. Even today, they are still fallacious Jews inside of Judaism. Consequently, to be a Jew has nothing to do with an ethnic background or a racial background. It has to do just like anybody. You accept the religion and the discussion. Sammy Davis is a Jew. Where's the problem? There is no problem. When Zionists come to tell us that to be a Jew, one has to be of a special race or their race is face. That's all they are. They can't even be Jews. If one were a Jew, one could not be a Zionist, and a Zionist certainly is not a Jew. Anytime you look at Bacon and you think he believes in God, you know that's Satan trying to confuse you. You think he believes in God. We just give examples of Judaism in passing. But we've shown now any African conscious of their history, knowing that Judaism began in Africa, would know precisely what their responsibility is to it, and is to Zionism, and consequently would know that they have no alternative except to give their unconditional support to the Palestine Liberation Organization, which represents the true owners of the land, Palestine, and who will get it back. Christianity is instructive for us. If you would go to the Africans in America and ask them what is their religious persuasion, at least 90% of them would tell you they were Christians. And these would be honest Christians, church-going Christians, hymn-singing Christians, Bible-quoting Christians. If you take this 90%, I'll bet you 50% of them can read and write. Ask this 50% how many of them have read, not studied, read the Bible from cover to cover. Less than 2% have done it, but that's not amazing. The amazing thing is the overwhelming majority of these Christians who can read and write have no intention of reading the Bible before they die and go home and see their Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Peace be upon his name. And all the followers he got, he really needs it in the state they are. Anyone who read the Bible, anyone who knows anything about the Bible, knows the first country mentioned in the Bible is Ethiopia. Genesis 2, verse 13. According to the version of the Bible you have, it might be spelled Cush, C-U-S-H, or K-U-S-H. If you will go to an authoritative source, you will know Cush, either with a C or a K, is the name for Ethiopia. We say Genesis 2, verse 13. Ethiopia is mentioned, first country. Even today, recognized by the Vatican as the oldest church is the Ethiopian church. Anyone who knows anything about Christianity knows that Christianity flourished in North Africa. As a matter of fact, when Jesus Christ was in trouble, peace be upon his name, His mother took him to Africa. It was there where he was hidden for 10 years, where he grew physically and spiritually. One knows anything about Christianity, one knows the first monasteries in the world came from Africa. St. Augustine ain't nothing but an African. If one knows anything about the Bible, one knows that Jesus Christ never saw Europe. If one knows anything about Christianity, one knows his disciples never saw Europe. If one knows the slightest thing about Christianity, one knows it was the apostles who spread Christianity to Europe. And Christianity didn't take hold of Europe until 400 years after the death of Jesus Christ. These are facts. How then can an African Christian, being conscious of his history, come to bow down before a white Jesus? It's only an unconscious African who can do this. The statement which we make is a true statement. We're not even trying to affirm what color Jesus Christ is, but we say anyone who's just looked at the Bible loosely, just taking a cursory look at the Bible, knows that Jesus Christ could be just about any color, but the one color he definitely could not be is white. But you look everywhere you go, even in churches of Africans in this country, you see white Jesuses. Of course. Just between you and I, this man who they've made as Jesus is nothing but the uncle of the painter who painted him. Of course, we laugh, but just think of the damage that is imposed upon us when we bow down before a white Jesus. And what is worse is that it's a lie. It's just European imperialism taking Christianity, which flourished in Africa, and using this Christianity against us. We say, even though we have instinctive love of justice, this enemy is so vicious that he will take our good instincts and use it against us. Then, the question of struggle must be a question of putting reason and controlling this instinct. This can only be done through organization. Our task is clear. We come to make our people free. Consequently, we come to see the structures and the enemies against us. We're showing this enemy is vicious. There is nothing this enemy will not do. The enemy will turn an African against Africa when Africa has never done anything to anybody, only she's been victimized by everybody. Yes. We say we come to struggle relentlessly against this system in the material aspect. We've given examples of Africa's contribution in Judaism, in Christianity. Why Islam, while not being born in Africa, being born in Mecca, everyone knows of the great relationship of Africa to Islam. When the feudal lords ran the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon his name, to Medina, he sent all his disciples to Africa. It was there they were given refuge. Even though the feudal lords had diplomatic, political, commercial, and trade relationships with Ethiopia, Ethiopia refused to turn over the disciples of the prophet to the feudal lords. If they did, there's no question that they would have all been executed. It was only when the prophet was once again strong in Medina that the disciples could go and join him. We're not claiming any great role here for Africa, but we're certainly saying, did Africa not protect the cadres, the disciples of the prophet? At the time that they did, Islam would have had a much harder time spreading over the face of the earth. Certainly we know of the contribution of the African Bilal himself to the religion. Here, Bilal himself came to give the call to worship, to use the voice, as opposed to the bell being used by the Christians. We all know the prophet himself was illiterate, couldn't read and write. The Quran was passed to him through inspiration from Allah himself, but it was Bilal who could read and write that wrote down most of the Quran. Consequently, the contributions of Africa to the three great religions would make any African who recognized their history, any conscious African, to be so proud that any time they saw a Jew, for example, who came to say, "You're my best friend," "Yes, I am your best friend. Your religion began in my hometown." Of course. Of course. Of course. Of course. We give examples. We said the struggle must pursue in the material aspect, but the enemy is organized. Consequently, we cannot come to fight the enemy if we're unorganized. Indeed, any people seeking to fight an enemy who is not as serious as the enemy is an unserious people. You may not choose your enemy, but chooses you. If you are not as serious as the enemy, you are most unserious. But the condition of our people is such that the enemy, our enemy, is more enthusiastic about perpetrating injustice against us than we are about perpetrating justice for ourselves. If you know anything about America, you will know from where I stand, where I speak, within a 50-mile radius, there exists a chapter of the Ku Klux Klan.
Right.
Of course, yeah. The Ku Klux Klan is over 100 years old. Did you know that, my sister? Yes. No, before that. Yeah, since the Hayes-Tilden Compromise, 1878. It even showed its appearance before that, but that's when it showed its organizational expressions. Yeah. The Ku Klux Klan is over 100 years old. We don't have in America one organization fighting for us that's over 100 years old. The closest thing we have is the Pan-African movement, which found its organizational expressions in 1900. This, of course, was organized by Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois before he organized the Niagara Conference in 1906, which led to the development of the NAACP in 1911. The 1900 was the organizational expression. It's the oldest movement we have. And many of us are not even conscious of this movement. We have a lot of work to do as a people. We say we do not have one organization that is as old as the Ku Klux Klan. Now, it must be clear to us, the Ku Klux Klan in this country will only be stopped by us. We don't expect the police to do it. We don't expect the Ku Klux Klan to do it because the FBI to do it, because the FBI and the police are the Ku Klux Klan. Everybody knows that. There's no discussion here. They will only be destroyed by us. But we will only destroy them when we are organized. An unorganized force cannot go up against an organized force and win. No way. Not only that, we say, you must at least be as serious as your enemy. My brother, do you know in the Ku Klux Klan there are white men your age? Of course. White men your age. Your age. And their women make their uniforms, and their women make bake cakes and sell cakes and clean their rifles. Yes. Yes. This white man your age goes regularly to a Klan meeting and regularly studies racist ideology and internalizes it. He goes regularly to shooting practice. He goes regularly to take demolition lessons to know how to blow you up. This is a fact, and we all know it. We say, how can it be that the enemy is more enthusiastic about perpetrating evil against us than we are about protecting ourselves and perpetrating our own justice? How can it be that a white man in the Ku Klux Klan is more willing to be an organization which is trying to shoot you, and our people will not be an organization which is trying to protect us? 97% of the masses of our people do not belong to any organization fighting for the benefit of the people. 97% of the masses of our people do not belong to any organization fighting for the people. Solutions are never difficult to arrive at. The truth itself is not difficult, even in a capitalist system. If one is persistent, one will always find the truth. Difficulty only arises in the implementation of the truth. Every student instinctively knows that they shouldn't cheat. It's clear. No one has to teach them. They know it instinctively, yet they cheat. Every African knows that his people will not be free until they're organized, yet they're not in organizations. We say the truth is not difficult. Difficulty only arises in the implementation of the truth. But the truth will only be implemented through constant political education. Hear the word. Constant political education. Hear the word. Constant political education. Every child in this country, 7 years old or over, knows Coca-Cola. Every child over 7 years in this country knows about Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola doesn't stop singing Coca-Cola jingles or putting up Coca-Cola signs. On the contrary, it's putting up more signs, it's singing more jingles. When we come to fight about the people, we can't come to fight and think the people know black is beautiful. Shut up. We must sing it and sing it and sing it. police than they did since 1700. Look at it clearly. See the issue. The issue is clear. The police department of Philadelphia is not organized on instinct. It's organized on science. Gathering experience from generation and passing it down to generation to generation. The police in Philadelphia do not oppress us sometimes, they oppress us all the time. Not only do they oppress us all the time, but all the time while they oppress us, they're trying to better their equipment of oppressing us. When we come to fight against the police, when we come to fight for the people, we don't fight some of the time, we fight all the time. And not only do we fight all the time, but all the time while we're fighting, we're betting our bodies as instruments of perfect fighters for the people's cause. The struggle is constant. But it cannot be constant unless we are organized. Solutions, we said, are simple. I organized for the All African People's Revolutionary Party. I've been consciously working for my people since I'm 17 years old. I'm 40. Many organizations which I joined, which I helped build with my sweat, kicked me out. Some even threatened me with guns. Some organizations which I helped to build went reactionary. I had to resign. But every day, the day before I resigned from one, the day before they kicked me out of one, before I was kicked out, my foot was already in another organization. Because it is only through organization that we will win our liberation. And if you want your liberation, the people must be organized. The Irish in this country are organized along ethnic lines. The Italians in this country are organized along ethnic lines. The Poles in this country are organized around ethnic lines. Everybody except us, and we're the ones who need to be more organized than anybody else. Solutions are not at all difficult. The problem here is simply a problem of motivation. We come to struggle against the enemy where he has the immaterial control of the people's mind, where he lets the people think that everything is all right, or ain't no need to fight because you can't change nothing anyhow. It is between these two extremes that we must come to struggle. In the first place, we must show the people that everything changes all the time. Of course. It is this way the oppressed always has hope. Since everything changes all the time, we know the master cannot be master all the time. Everything changes all the time. Not only does everything change all the time, we come to say man and woman have the responsibility to come to guide and direct and transform change. In fact, it is done by man and woman anyway, whether they are conscious or unconscious of it. America, being a capitalist country, directs the energies of the people into a certain channel, into a certain path, whether the people know it or not. For example, if America were truly a serious country, if America cared about humanity, rather than developing a hydrogen bomb, they would have developed a cure for cancer. It's a question of where you direct the energies of the people. The people's energies must be directed towards their liberation. The All African People's Revolutionary Party says that since all problems have a solution, we have the solution to our problem. The solution to our problem is Pan-Africanism, the total liberation and unification of Africa under scientific socialism. We say the solution to our problem is Pan-Africanism, the total liberation and unification of Africa under scientific socialism. We say what has been said for centuries: until Africa is free, no African anywhere in the world will ever be free. Of course, most Africans in America do not think they're Africans, but this is because they don't think. Of course, they think, but they're not. They're doing is reacting to stimuli, and in reacting to this stimuli, they think they're thinking. And the stimuli they're reacting to is Tarzan. Tarzan itself is unthought. Here there's no thought. Anyone who knows anything about Africa could only know that Tarzan was created in the minds and imagination of white people at best. It is not no real reality, but we say most of our people in America know absolutely nothing about Africa except Tarzan. We might repeat, 80%, nay, higher than that, 87% of the people in this country have never read one book by Martin Luther King, not one. Not one. All they know about King is what they got from TV. That's where they got Tarzan from. No wonder there's so much confusion amongst our people. Yeah. The people will be free of this. There isn't the slightest question. The instinctive love of justice alone will drive them on. We give examples everywhere. Some people become confused because they think that struggle takes only one form. When a man or a woman thinks that struggle takes only one form, they become dogmatic. Here, they come to hurt the struggle. Struggle takes many forms, as it must. The oppressor oppresses us on every front. The educational must be on every front. It's for this reason that the All-African People's Revolutionary Party are against these groups which attack unemployment, which attack police repression, which attack bad housing, which attack only aspects of capitalism without attacking the entire entity of capitalism. By not attacking the entire entity of capitalism, they come to help capitalism by saying if they get better schools, everything will be all right. Of course. The entity of the structure must be struggled against and overthrown. The All-African People's Revolutionary Party says Pan-Africanism is the objective, and the only vehicle is an organization. We say we do not need to discuss organization, it's clear. Our people are not organized, where can we go? What can we do? With organization, there isn't anything you can do. Without organization, there isn't anything you can do. We don't understand what the problem is about organization. We say the facts are clear for everyone. You may disagree with our party, you may disagree with its line, you may disagree with what it calls its vehicle, its means of arriving at the solution to the people's problem, but you cannot disagree with us when we say to you that our people must be organized. Of course, to be organized is not difficult. Just like anything else, all you got to do is do it. Don't think about it. Well, if you think about organizing your people, think about organizing your people, think about organizing people, think about organizing people, but you don't organize your people, that's just what you've done. You haven't organized your people, you just thought about it. Our people must be organized. We say difficulty doesn't arise in knowing it, it's only implementation. And the reason why we're blocked is because the capitalist system has control of us immaterially. We don't think for ourselves. As a matter of fact, come and tell a brother to think about Africa, he's thinking about America. Look, even a Zionist, you get a young Zionist who grew up in America, well, ask the Zionist who's lived better than we have politically, economically, in every aspect. Ask the Zionist, which is more important to you, Israel or America? Without blinking an eye, he will tell you Israel. Get an African, born in the ghettos of Philadelphia, been in and out of jail, whooped by police, beaten over the head. Ask him, brother, which is more important to you, Africa or America? He gonna think. Yeah. The struggle that we have here is a struggle of political education. We come to use the truth. Once the people know the truth about Africa, they will be proud to be Africans. We don't come to lie. We come to show them their responsibility. Once they know what contributions Africa has made to world civilization, they know they have a responsibility to guard the contributions of their ancestors. Consequently, they will always struggle to make contributions to humanity. The people must know their history. But they can only know it if they are organized. We say the form of the struggle changes. If we were just to trace the form of the struggle in America from the 1950s to the late 60s, we can see it went through many changes. In the early 1950s, the dominant form of struggle was the legal struggle, waged by the NAACP at the level of the courthouse. Understand, this struggle was supported by the masses of our people in the South, who during those days in the 50s gave their nickels and dimes to the NAACP legal defense funds because they saw it as the effective means of achieving liberation. But even before the legal battle can become the dominant form of struggle, the street boycott, bus boycott began to emerge as a dominant form by 1956 with King and Montgomery. And even before this one could consolidate itself, nonviolent demonstrations such as the sit-ins by the early 60s established themselves as a dominant form. And even before they could do this, by 1964, Watts came to lead the way, showing that the urban rebellion would be the major form following that. And from 1964 through 1968, every major city in this country had an urban rebellion. Of course, from the 1969 onward, the struggle changes. Here are those who are serious about the people's struggle come to address themselves to the question of ideology, to the question of thought, to the question of principles, to the question of everlasting organization. It is here then that you come to differentiate the people. We say, if one comes to hold on to the form, one becomes dogmatic. I've seen people who came into the struggle when nonviolence, when the legal battle was being effective. We were winning so many struggles. And when the struggle changed from the legal battle to go to the street, these people couldn't move. They condemned the movement. They said the movement was incorrect. They should stay here. So too, when the movement went to nonviolence, those who came into it as nonviolence and seeing the effectiveness of nonviolence, when the movement went to self-defense, could no longer move. They became trapped, condemning those who went to self-defense and to violence. And consequently, in the 1960s, when the struggle went to ideological level, those who were not used to this came again to condemn the struggle, becoming dogmatic. We are struggling people. We have to change and be flexible in our struggle. Our principles never change. We want our freedom, but we change in the way we get them. Malcolm is correct. We get it by any means necessary. If we can get it this way today, we get it this way. If it stops working this way, we change to another way. What is important is the constant struggle, not the form of the struggle. A people can, of course, never, well, of course, bourgeois historians tell us that history repeats itself. Nothing is further from the truth. History cannot repeat itself. Nothing can repeat itself because everything changes all the time. A people can repeat their mistakes, yes. And certainly if the people do not analyze their mistakes, they will not even know what are their mistakes. As a people, we don't analyze our history. We've said 87% of our people have never read one book by King, never read one book by King. We didn't mention Malcolm. We didn't mention Nkrumah. We mentioned King. Everybody loves him. Yet though they love him, they don't read him. Well, you know, people get confused between religion and revolution. Religion you can get instinctively. As did Paul. Paul was a bad man, but when walking along the highway, the light of God touched him, he felt God, and he became a Christian. Bang. But to be a revolutionary, you can't be touched to say you're revolutionary. It's a science. You've got to study it. Of course. You have to study it. That's why you have so many Christians that don't read the Bible, because they feel it. They got the Spirit, but they don't think it. Yeah. But to be revolutionary, you've got to study, because revolution is based on science, not on instinct. And people have to come to transform the quantity to quality. It is only animals that come to see quantitative progress as being able to make and have effect upon their lives. For human beings, it is only qualitative changes that make progress for us. Look, in the 1960s, we had no African mayors. Today, we have them in Hartford, Connecticut, in Newark, New Jersey, in Washington, D.C., in Atlanta, Georgia, in Newark, New Jersey, in Birmingham, Alabama, in Los Angeles, California, in Richmond, California. All over the place, we have a host of African mayors. A few years ago, we didn't have any. This year, we got a lot. That means that a quantitative change has occurred here. We would be illogical to assume that because there's a quantitative change, there's also a corresponding qualitative change. As a matter of fact, just the slightest look at the situation will let us look that in these cities where today there exist African mayors, where they did not exist yesterday, the condition of life, the quality of life of the masses of our people is worse off today under these African mayors than they were before the African mayors. It's a question of critical organization of the quantity. How do we critically organize ourselves to advance the struggle? Our people must be organized. We say, if you don't agree with us, join an organization. But if you are conscious about your people's struggle, if you are not a member of the All-African People's Revolutionary Party, you need to be a member of another organization fighting for the people. And certainly we have many. The excuse here certainly cannot be we don't have many. NAACP, Urban League, Nation of Islam, Republic of New Africa, Black Liberation Army, so many. So many. The struggle for liberation, the struggle for the people's freedom is not an ethical question. That is to say, one doesn't have a moral choice of whether one should or should not struggle for the people. If one is not struggling for one's people, one is against one's people. We want to make it clear. Some people think, well, I ain't against the revolution, I don't know nothing for it either. You're against it. If your people are oppressed and you're not helping to liberate the people, by your very active inactivity, you are against your people. We want to make it clear here. There is no moral question here. This is simply a question of responsibility, of conscious individuals understanding it. There needs to be really no discussion on it. All people who are oppressed know they have to be fighting to free themselves. And the only way they can be doing it is in an organization. How then do we conclude? Of course, those who are enthusiastic about what they do never tire in doing it, even rituals. A conscious Christian prays every night, says the Lord's Prayer every night, and never gets tired of saying it. A true Muslim prays 5 times a day, says the same prayer every day, but every day he says it, every time he says it, becomes more inspired by it if he's a conscious Muslim. We are revolutionaries. We too, just like the Muslims, just like the conscious Christians, do not become tired in our task. Call for our people to organize. That's our call. We've been raising this call for over 20 years. We've been saying our people must organize. Our people must organize. Our people must organize. And while saying it, we've been doing our best to make ourselves the best example of someone who uses all their energies to organize the masses of the people. For our people to liberate themselves, the task is not difficult. All that we need is the political education of the masses of the people. The political education of the masses of the people will only come through organizations. Those of you who understand precisely what we've been speaking of, we ask you, at the end of our program, to come here on the left, and we'll talk to you about joining our party, the All-African People's Revolutionary Party. Those of you who do not join our organization, but come here and have just acquired quantitative changes, that is, addition of knowledge, but you do not come to critically organize this knowledge, have wasted your time coming to the meeting. It would have been better that you didn't come. We want to have a qualified effect upon your life. And the only way that will happen is when you organize this quantity, which we've been discussing, in a critical manner to make a qualitative difference. What then must you do? If you're not in an organization now, get into one. What then must you do? If you're in an organization now, work harder in that organization. The solution then is simple. We do not want you to say that we came and just discussed the problems and didn't point to the solution. The solution is organization. Some will come to tell us that the leaders of these organizations, they organize. They do not represent but 3% of the people. They cannot be organized. It is the task of us to bring the 97.5% into organization. This task will be accomplished. We want to say it will be accomplished. We've said that the people have an instinctive love of justice. We've demonstrated it through the creation of religions. We've demonstrated it through the struggle with the Irish. But if you want to see the example more clearly, look to your homeland, look to Africa. Of course, and Nkrumah teaches us that a man must not judge, you do not judge a man by the heights he's achieved, but you judge him by the depths from which he's come. Once you understand this statement, just for example, judging John F. Kennedy and Abraham Lincoln, we will see that we must judge Lincoln, the greater of the two. Lincoln came from a log cabin. Kennedy was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. When you judge a man, when you judge a people, you don't judge them by the heights they achieve, you judge them by the depths from which they've come. It is only in judging Africa this way that you will come to see the true revolutionary potential of the masses of your people. We say, and we repeat, Africa is going to be free. Of that there isn't the slightest question. We say this freedom itself is a result of the instinctive love of justice which the people have. We say that this is demonstrated universally by all people, but we give in the case of Africa a most sterling particular example. A few years ago, Africa was dominated by Spain, England, France, Germany, Holland, Belgium, Portugal, and America. A few years ago, Africa was dominated by France, Spain, Italy, Germany, Holland, French, Belgium, Portugal, America, and Britain, all at the same time. So arrogant were these imperialist powers that in 1884 they came in Berlin and sat down and divided Africa. The French took this part. The Italians took this part. The Dutch took this part. The Belgians took this part. The British took this part. The Portuguese took this part. Oh, they thought that their exploitation of our continent was forever. Certainly, those of us not understanding and making a penetrating analysis of human nature might come to agree with them. Look at the situation. These European imperialist powers had guns, they had cannons, they had fast ships, and technology appeared to be rising rapidly in Europe. In Africa, we had no guns. In Africa, we had no cannons. In Africa, we had no fast ships, and technology appeared to be stagnant in Africa. But we say the people have an instinctive love of justice, and this instinctive love of justice, beyond reason and outside of reason, impels the people towards freedom. These Africans, without guns, came together, put the Italians out, put the Spanish out, put the Germans out, put the British out, put the French out, put the Portuguese out, We just seized power in Zimbabwe, and it's only a fool who doesn't know Namibia and Tanzania, South Africa, gonna take it. Africa gonna be unified, and socialists, no force on earth can stop it. No. One. The people will be free. That's not the question. The only question we ask ourselves is what contribution shall we make to the people's process towards liberation? The people will be free. Of that there isn't the slightest question. The only question we must ask ourselves is what contribution will I make to my people's liberation struggle? We repeat, the only way it can be made is in an organized manner. We overemphasize, if we're not in an organization, we're against the people. We underline, join organization. We reiterate, join the All African People's Revolutionary Party, but we underline, join organization. Thank you. We get questions?
Questions, comments?
I'll answer the question on scientific socialism. I'm sorry.
Any ethnic group or ethnic here in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, what is the ethnic
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
We have a lot of different ethnic here from different tribes throughout the world. Black or African or rich. And we have been programmed to a mass society of complexity since the late 70s come about. And there's a lot of people who are not judging with judge each individual not by his color, but by the person of the character. And we have a lot of morbid minds who want to say today here in the United States, who are governing one another on a complexity, actually virtually keep our attributes to the mind, because we have been swayed into a color complexion. Could you bring some type of valid principle where the mind can perceive that we are dealing with a mental perspective and not dealing with a complexity?
Well, I think it's clear. I think even the remarks you made are clear. But here we would just want to emphasize that the only way the people can be doing that is when they come together around principles, around clear principles. These principles, of course, must be just principles. But I think the remarks you made are clear. What they say is nonsense. You cannot judge a man by the color of his skin. You can only judge him by the content of his character. But this will only be done when we become an organized force and imposes this upon this backward society. Until we do that, it will not be done. That's clear. Consequently, again, it underlines the need for organization.
Well, I'm going to make another statement on that. In order to organize, I say today we have in the United States of America, we have something like 35 to 40 million black people here in the country. We are in the armed forces throughout the United States. We have the Marines, the Air Force, the Army, the Navy, and we even have a few blackers in the West Point. We have officers, black officers throughout the United States, in every city of the Union. We have clergymen. We can go into the churches, into the temples, into the masjids, and order these officers, that's on the black forces, that's on the people throughout the United States, to come in and to listen to us. And once we can order them, then we never had to ask for any ammunition, because we had the ammunition. The first revolution that started here in America was the revolution of 1851. They nicknamed it the Civil War. In order for us to come out of these rat holes that we're in, we're going to have to get on the road right now and come together with the mental force, bring ourselves together for all our countrymen and our constituents and faculties. And this is the only way that our constituents.
All right. But we don't have to depend upon them now. Each and every one of us must make our own individual contribution to the collective effort. Consequently, each of us must be in an organization. The essence of what we say is very simple. What we're saying is that every African here inside this room who cares about the people must be in an organization. And that we must create an atmosphere such that brothers and sisters in our community who are not in organizations will not be respected.
I'm not saying that it's totally us as a race, but what I see, and every aspect, political, politically and, socially and, the black environment, that we're too much against each other. I don't see us, being united as a people.
Yeah, but that's the reason why we're against each other, is because we do not control the immaterial aspect of our lives. The immaterial aspect of our lives teaches us that we're basically negative, more negative than positive. Consequently, we hate ourselves, but that's because we're not even teaching ourselves. We're being taught by the enemy.
Yeah, we're ashamed of ourselves, of our own selves. From some of those black Christians, I know a lady was telling me in the Bible about Abraham, the sons of Abraham, that we came from a black seed, and God cursed us and said, well, for the disrespect of the man's father, I think it was Ham, Shem, and Meshach, that we, will be servants to his brother, and we shall have natural hair. And I really think that's really stupid, and that's a cruel, way to say that we are inferior by nature.
Well, certainly we're not inferior.
No.
But unless we organize, we might come to accept it. Louder, please.
You've been organizing for a long time. Have you found the message of black people very anti-communist? And if you have, how does that affect the AARP's scientific socialism?
The people are not anti-communist. The people don't know anything about communism. So once we begin to show them or teach them, once we begin to show them or inspire them to know about it, then they start to move correctly. But they're not anti-communist. They don't know anything about it. So they're filled with ignorance. Now, they may be arrogant in their ignorance because that's the way the system molds them. But for us, we have no struggle. Anytime I come to struggle with somebody in America who's anti-communist, I'll whoop them because I know they don't know nothing about communism. They're totally ignorant of it. So I just tie them up in circles. So people don't know about it. What we can say is that the American capitalist system has made the people afraid of the words communism and socialism. Yeah. Now our job is to teach the people not to fear. We are in Krumist, and Krumah teaches us the secret of life is to have no fear. So we now come to the people and tell them, don't be afraid of the word socialism. Matter of fact, that's what's going to save you.
It's clear that oppression takes two forms in the United States, two central forms, and that's one's racial and the other is economic. In terms of an overall revolution, an overthrow of capitalism, do you see poor whites as a potential source of support? Do you see a coalition between blacks and poor whites?
Not only are they support in America, it is their task to dismantle capitalism, and they will live up to the historic task. The white working class will organize and will destroy American capitalism. The problem here must be seen in another wider context and be properly understood. Most white leftist groups in America, which have been dominated by Marxist-Leninist thought, but unfortunately few have really grasped the essence of Marxist-Leninism, have come to wage heavy battle against the African nationalist groups in America. This, of course, is nothing new. The Honorable Marcus Garvey was fought on one hand by the FBI ruthlessly and without mercy, and on the other hand by the Communist Party, USA. Of course, we must understand as revolutionaries that the enemy is attacking someone, that we don't attack that someone also. Even if we're against that someone, let them use all their energies against the enemy. Consequently, we have to question them when they come, but we understand the problem. The problem is that many of them do not think that we are capable of thinking for ourselves. Even here, the problem of this struggle of Marxism-Leninism itself, its role and task and struggle, has to be defined by really the Africans themselves as they struggled. Marxism-Leninism can be used both as a methodology and as an ideology. I cannot, as a non-European, use it as an ideology. My ideology must come from my culture. I must use it as a methodology. White leftist groups in America want the Africans in this country not only to use Marxism-Leninism as a methodology, but also as an ideology. Once it is used as an ideology by us, they control us because it's from their culture. V.I. Lenin wrote a little pamphlet, the name of which escapes me. I think it's called The Component Parts of Marxism, or The Three Parts of Marxism. It's a little pamphlet, no more than 16 or 20 pages. In it, Lenin shows that Marxism comes from three sources: German idealist philosophy, Hegel, British economy, Mills, and French utopian socialism, Fourier and Saint Simon. Well, obviously, being African, I'm neither German, English, nor French, so this doesn't speak to my culture. My ideology must come from my culture. Consequently, I'm an Nkrumahist. Nkrumahist comes out of the struggles of the African people as they've been continued for centuries and passed away. But I can use Marxism-Leninism as a methodology. Herein lies the problem. The white left in this country tells us that we must form coalitions with the white working class. Of course, let history be clear. Nowhere in our history have you ever seen the African masses unwilling to form coalitions with anybody in this country. As a matter of fact, the real history is the reverse. The African masses have at all times, under all conditions, come willingly to work in coalitions with everybody and has been betrayed by everybody. And the betrayal has always been the organized white working class. Not the white working class, the organized trade movement of the white workers. From the time of Tom Watson, I don't know if you know Tom Watson, the populist, all the way down to the AFL-CIA, same difference, yeah. Anyway, yeah, all the way down to the AFL, they've been betrayed. So when Africans come down to speak and say they want to have their own organization, and this organization must be independent, not only materially, i.e. finance, but independent immaterially in thought, we must think for ourselves, struggle arises. But there's no need for the struggle. Just as the revolutionary movement in America, we will see the Africans have always been on the forefront of struggle. They were the first to wage their struggle against labor. A slave revolt is nothing but a labor strike, the bloodiest and the bloodiest you'll ever see, but this is a crucial aspect here, because the slave, none of his labor can be used for him. So here, when the slave rises up, it's a struggle against labor. It's a struggle against labor and capital of the most extent. So the first labor strikes in this country were led by slave revolts. We're just giving correct history. Once history is placed correctly, you will see that the African masses are always on the forefront fighting against capitalism by themselves. The consciousness of the white workers is lower at this point than the consciousness of the Africans. Consequently, the Africans are the most instinctively revolutionary group in the country. If we put them into an organization with the white working class, whose consciousness is lower, they will hold back this instinctive revolutionary consciousness. Once they do that, they'll be helping the enemy. The proper role, let the Africans have their independence, let them clear the way and drag the larger white community into struggle as they do all the time anyway. As they do that more and more, as the whites become more and more conscious, then you'll get real alliances. But alliances, of course, can only be made on a scientific level, not on sentiment. In the 1960s, they said we had an alliance between the labor movement. The labor movement in this country is against poor whites. How is it going to be for us? And that's the alliance, because this alliance wasn't based on science. It wasn't based on scientific analysis. It was based on sentiment. And you don't make alliances based on sentiment when you come to struggle and revolution. You make alliances based on real need, real necessity, real ability to move towards the objective, to fight the enemy. The working class in this country is not our enemy, but the trade union is our enemy. It's not only our enemy, it's the enemy of the white working class. That's clear. Consequently, if we come to either make an alliance with them, which we're forced into, while making an alliance with them, we must be pumping the white and five in the labor union to revolt against their backward leadership. So even when you make an alliance with somebody who's your enemy, there must be a reason. But here there's no reason. Just make a good old alliance, grand old flag. All of us run stupidity. The white working class will come and take its proper role. It will come to be the mainstay of the revolutionary struggle in America against capitalism. But the African's primary occupation is a unified socialist Africa.
Mr. Carmichael, is there any reason in particular when you were mentioning W.H.B. Du Bois, Yonko Garvey, Marcus Garvey, and all that, is there any reason in particular that you didn't mention Franz Fanon?
No, just there's so many. There's so many, you know, and we just pick, you know, here and there, but of course, Fanon is a great man, must be read, must be studied. Fanon is a shining example for those of us who are Pan-Africanists. He was born in Martinique. He gave up everything and went to fight in Africa. And Fanon makes a great contribution to Pan-Africanism because his fight is in North Africa. Of course, he goes to Algeria and becomes a part of the National Liberation Front of Algeria, fighting with them. He's also clear because he shows transformation. He went to work for the French as a psychiatrist for the French. And there he saw the brutality of French colonialism, and he transformed and became a fighter against the French. Fanon is extremely important for those of us who are Pan-Africanists. Of course, all other people interpret him every other way than as a Pan-Africanist. But that's to be understood. Even Du Bois, they never say Du Bois was a Pan-Africanist, and Du Bois organized the Pan-African Conference in 1900 before he organized the NAACP. And he died in Ghana, which showed that just in quantity, in terms of quantity, nothing occupied his life like Africa. And in terms of quality, it's true here, in terms of his work for Africa. Because, of course, just a way of them interpreting, they don't interpret Malcolm X as a Pan-Africanist. Yeah, for us, Fanon is important as a Pan-Africanist. There's so many we didn't mention it.
If we realize that in order to achieve that, we would have to initiate armed struggle in terms of our own organization as a people, and knowing the sophistication and the techniques of destruction that our enemy does have, how far do we know how to commit ourselves to a strategy? At what point are we willing to begin to add up those that fall and those that stand as a result of the weapon and the power of the enemy that we do face?
No, here, we're going to be free. There's no question. All we have to do is look at history. History will show us that it's not weapons that decide, it's just the determination of the people. It's not the technology. History's demonstrated that to us everywhere. Vietnamese give us the most sterling example. They defeated American imperialism with all the power and might of America. The very helicopters which America was supposed to use to squash the fight was what they were running for to get on up to get out of
it. Once mentioned that we are in the heart of the lion's mouth.
Now, all the more reason why we can crush them.
In a very different situation than it was.
Of course.
In a Vietnamese.
Of course, but once you look at it that way, it's isolated, but once you understand that we're Africa's fifth column against American imperialism, it's not so bad at all. Because, yeah, even if all of us sacrifice our lives, it's for a worthy cause, our nation, Africa. So even here, taken to its most bleak outlook, we still come out winning. Oh, Africa definitely gonna rise, no question about it.
Should the all-African people, no, should the Pan-African movement make an alliance with the Soviet Union?
Of course. Of course. There's no question here. If you look at the struggles in Africa, the Soviet Union has been giving us arms, material and immaterial support, political support, everywhere. The IGC, the liberation movement in Guinea-Bissau, was fighting against Portuguese colonialism. America was giving guns to the Portuguese. Russia was giving guns to Amilcar Cabral at the AIGC.
Well, then, why not in alliance with the American Communist Party?
Well, now, the American Communist Party and the Communist Party of the Soviet Union is not the same thing. And the American Communist Party doesn't give any guns to the ANC. They might want to, but the Soviet Union can and does. That's a big difference. It's a big difference. Of course, we respect the CP-USA, but we don't put it in the same, and not only that, the CP-USA itself would have certain problems to solve the national question in relation to Africans in America. That's the problem they have. Principal problem for them. But the problem for the Africans in America would make a little bit different here.
Well, you don't see that them solving that particular problem?
They'll have to solve it. They'll have to solve it because we're going to organize every African in this country in the AAPRP.
But it is possible.
Of course. Of course, of course. We want it. We want it. Our party is actively seeked everywhere, relationships with all these left-wing organizations. They call us racist because we're all African. But we see the CP-USA applauding the Chinese Communist Party, and they're all Chinese. We don't understand the difference. They applaud the Korean Workers' Party, and they're all Koreans. They applaud the Vietnamese, and the Vietnamese told everybody, nobody can fight for us but Vietnamese. They even told the Russians, they told the Cubans. They told us. So we want to fight for you. No, 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 it's our fight. We'll do it by ourselves. You take care. Thank you. Nobody called them racist. It's just a question of understanding that the Africans in this country have to have their own organization, directed by them, controlled by them, and led by them, and they're going to have it, and that's all. And then every other organization must deal with that reality. But to try and make this reality another reality here, they will not have it at all. And this has been a great problem, of course, with the CP-USA.
I think I'm hoping somebody got an ALD in Washington, New York this year. because the same day is the one that the AARP, I was on clarity on.
Let me tell you a little bit about African Liberation Day. You know, the All-African People's Revolutionary Party is an incrumist party. All-African Liberation Day traces itself back to April 1958, April 15, 1958. That's when the All-African People's Conference was held in Ghana, when Nkrumah was president. Those countries had met there, not only those countries, all those organizations, because you had the 8 independent African countries, plus all the organizations that were fighting for liberation. Lumumba was there, Nyerere was there, all of those who hadn't received their independence yet. They decided April 15th would be African Freedom Day, on which demonstrations would be held everywhere to raise the consciousness of people, African people in particular, to their responsibility to the African liberation movement. When the Organization of African Unity was founded in May of 1963, African Freedom Day was changed to African Liberation Day, and the date was changed from April 15 to May 25th. In this country, there were struggles around the African Liberation Day. Our party started functioning in this country in 1967, but nobody knew our name. We were just a small group who were establishing certain bases, doing a certain amount of work, and didn't need to have any publicity about it. We decided to have African Liberation Day. Our party at that time, of course, like all revolutionary parties, we had gone through some splits. And our party at that time had some people who split from the party and decided to have African Liberation Day in 1972. Our party didn't fight them. On the contrary, our party worked very hard for African Liberation Day. We worked inside of them. We got all the best workers of the people who came to African Liberation Day. We took all the notes. We didn't get the publicity. African Liberation Day of 1972 was a big success. So big a success that after African Liberation Day, they formed what was known as African Liberation Support Committee, ALSC. The African Liberation Support Committee was made up of a hodgepodge of opportunists who were seeking to use Africa as a means to come and use the African community. We explained to them that for us, African Liberation Day was not a crisis-oriented Reaganism cutback nonsense, but it was an institution which we were going to build just like St. Patrick's Day. You see the difference? They couldn't understand the difference. Well, our party came to wage ideological struggle among all the groups in ALSC. And within 2 years, all of them were fighting each other, and none of them were capable of doing African Liberation Day. Our party then came and wrote each and every one of them letters and told them, we are going to hold African Liberation Day next year. We invite you to come with us and participate. Couldn't do it. We did it. They tried. They couldn't make it. They left it for a few years. Now that it's become big, they're trying again in New York to have another African Liberation Day, and trying to have it on the same day that we're having ours, and trying to take it to the UN. Of course, we say that only Africans can control African Liberation Day. Our line is so clear that even Afro-Americans cannot touch African Liberation Day. Afro-Americans ought to go have an Afro-American Liberation Day. Black Americans ought to go have a Black American Day. But African Liberation Day, certainly only we who consider ourselves Africans should at least be here in control of it. So our first question is that those who are now running it are not Africans, don't see themselves as Africans. Certainly, it would be amiss of me as an African to want to go and run St. Patrick's Day. I figure it'd be amiss of an Irish man, no matter how revolutionary he is, to come and try and run African Liberation Day under the flag of revolution. African Liberation Day must be controlled by Africans. African Liberation Day must maintain its revolutionary character. If you will look at the leaflets for the African Liberation Day program in New York City, all of it is reformism. They don't even mention capitalism once. They don't even mention imperialism once. They don't even mention Zionism once. They don't even mention socialism once. What do they mention? We got to fight against Reaganism. Reaganism is a term made up by Wall Street to confuse the people between Reaganism and capitalism, and here comes an organization confusing the people more using the same term.